great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out. And I want to begin our journey into your life by asking you this. We're going on the 5-year anniversary of this pandemic, and it was such a big unknown. There were so many pivots that were made. How much of living through that time period has affected the way that you do things and live life now?
Yeah, so first of all, Joe, thanks for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. I love the name, Neon Jazz and famous interviews. That's we'll get into that, I'm
Yes.
sure. And had a chance to look at some of the cool guests you've had on in the past. So very excited to have this conversation with you. Um, you know, work as a leadership consultant, trainer, coach, speaker, obviously changed dramatically over COVID because not to mention my being a professional musician. So it's just like everything that I do kind of requires being in front of a live audience, whether I'm playing in a band or speaking to a conference audience or in a training session. So when all of that closed down, bye bye livelihood, right?
Yeah.
So I had to pivot to virtual, learn Zoom and Microsoft Teams and all that, which I guess in hindsight was a good thing because that stuff hasn't gone away, right? I
Yeah.
mean, we're speaking virtually right now on Zoom. So a lot of my clients pivoted to virtual experience. Fortunately, some of the live stuff has come back, but that was a radical change to my business for sure. And you know, uh, probably the same way everybody's life kind of changed. Uh, um, just in terms of adjustments for our daughter's school and helping her navigate through online schooling, and that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Live music went away. It's starting to come back, or has started to come back over the last few years. But yeah, I mean, it dramatically changed my life just because of the things that I did to make money.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a regular
Sure.
basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids. It's career day, and one of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Yeah, so sometimes I have difficulty explaining to adults what I do, and they're like, what exactly do you do?" Um, so I founded and run a company called Right Chord Leadership, CHORD Leadership. I've been in the leadership and team development space for about 25 years. And what that means is I work with leaders and managers and supervisors, those in positions of authority in companies, and I work with them to help make them more effective, more productive, more successful in their jobs. I do that through training programs, workshops, one-on-one executive coaching. I do a fair amount of speaking in front of audiences about various dimensions of leadership and team, teamwork. And if it was a little kid, I would say, who's the leader in your classroom? Oh, it's Mrs. So and so, our teacher. I'm like, well, maybe I'd work with Mrs. Jones to help her be a more effective, teacher. Or have you ever been on a team? Yeah, I play on a baseball team. Well, I might work with your team and your coach to, see where your strengths are as a team, see where there's opportunities to get better. And so that's what I do. Yeah, so that's what I do. I also, as I said, I've played music professionally since I was a teenager, and the music piece is fully embedded in the leadership and team development piece. Hence the company name Right Chord Leadership. And I lean on a lot of my musical experience to do the for the work that I do with my corporate clients.
So, what did you want to be when you were a kid? Was it music or what was your dream?
When I was a real young kid, I wanted to be a heart surgeon. And I remember writing reports in elementary school about the heart. Pretty impressive for like a third grader,
Yeah.
and all the different valves of the heart and the chambers of the heart. I quickly realized that science was not necessarily my forte. I ended up being an English major. Uh, but I realized that I like to write, I like to be creative, and that sort of took me into music as my chosen art form. Not sculpting or dancing or dramatics, but music. But then as I got older, I realized that's a tough way to make a living.
Yeah.
So I've been fortunate to still play music out with my bands, incorporate music into my day job without the challenges of being a full-time professional musician.
So what was the first live show you saw? What was the first live jazz show?
The first live jazz show would have been back in the 80s. It might have been the Pat Metheny group.
Okay.
It might have been the Brecker brothers. As a saxophonist myself, one of my all-time idols is Mike Brecker.
Yeah.
I had the chance to see his band many times over the years. I remember seeing Maynard Ferguson
Yeah.
back in high school. So I have fond memories of, I saw Miles Davis
Wow.
in New York for the JVC Jazz Festival. And I was a little older. I was junior in college, maybe in the late 80s.
Yeah.
Saw the Yellow Jackets early on.
Very
So like
cool.
a lot of really uh, wonderful memories when I was a teenager and maybe in my 20s and 30s, seeing a lot of good jazz.
So talk to me a little bit about inspirations. Who's been kind of an inspiration for you in business and music and who you've become today?
Yeah, so Joe, I have a shirt that says "All my heroes are musicians," and I talk about that in the work that I do. I say, some people, love sports figures or actors or you know, influencers of one type or another, but I've always had a deep love and affection and been inspired by musicians. Not all the musicians I've been inspired by have been wonderful people in their personal lives. You take a person like Miles Davis, a bit of an ornery chap, right? Not
Yeah.
not not the nicest guy in the world, but when you take a look at his life and his journey and what he had to overcome and his approach to the music, that's where my inspiration comes from, and I try to connect the dots from some of his philosophy, some of his approach to playing and improvising, and pull that over into the world of teams and organizations. Whether we're talking about collaboration or creativity or spontaneity or curiosity, these grand themes that great jazz legends have spoken about and written about for decades, which I feel are highly relevant for today's for the modern organization. So there's a lot of connective tissue between the two worlds.
Absolutely. So, what inspires you every day to do this work? You got to, I mean, helping people be better leaders and helping them on their path requires you to dive into their world, but you have your life and your soul you got to take care of. What motivates you every day to do that together and at the best of your abilities?
A couple things. So I when I landed on this career choice around the turn of the millennium, I'd been an advertising copywriter through the 90s, writing advertising copy for different companies, and I realized that had kind of run its course, and I was more interested in sort of like the dynamics of the workplace and what were the hallmarks of good leaders versus poor leaders, or what were the hallmarks of good teams versus mediocre teams, and that sort of lit a fire in me. And then I realized that I could really make a difference in people's lives by doing this kind of work. Uh, Leading people to insights about themselves that maybe they didn't even realize, tapping into untapped potential, showing how leaders or members of a team could could experience renewed joy and success in their work. Like work didn't always have to be a slog.
Yeah.
Sure, there are challenges and things that we have to deal with, but that really excited me. And the prospect of people coming up to me and saying, "Gee, Mike, I didn't know what to think of this training session that my boss signed us up for, but I got to tell you, I really got a lot of value out of that. And you helped me see different dimensions and perspectives in my own work that I'm really going to take with me." Like, I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor or, you know, um, save the world, in some other fashion, but I knew that I could make an impact on people's lives this way. And then later on, when I saw the connection between the world of music and the world of leader and team development, that's where things really sort of exploded for me, in a very positive way.
So,
So, yeah,
yeah, no, go ahead. You're good.
I was gonna say, so what inspires me every day is that
Yeah.
feeling like I'm making a meaningful impact on people's lives. And then just being able to lean on my love of music and jazz in the work that I do. You can't see the posters and pictures here in my home office, Joe, but I'm surrounded by my inspirations, my icons. I got Coltrane over here, I got Sonny Rollins over here, I got the cover of Bitches Brew over here. I got the Beastie Boys behind me. Like I just it's not just jazz. I love rock and pop but primarily it's jazz is the well from which I drink the
Yeah.
most in the work that I do, because I think that's the genre of music where the most profound um, think thinkers regularly appear.
Yeah, for sure. So, the one thing about being a leader is you have to do risk. Even musicians, from Miles taking that leap to New York, running into Bird, all of that. In your
Sure.
career, what's the biggest risk that you've taken?
Definitely the biggest risk I've taken is to blend the musical background that I that I possess with the leadership and team development background, because prior to seeing the possibilities in that marriage of those two worlds, I was just Mike Brenner, leadership consultant, right? With a thousand other leadership consultants running around. But it wasn't until I had a friend and mentor who helped me see that marriage. And he said to me, Mike, what do you think differentiates yourself from all the other consultants and speakers and trainers running around out there? And I remember my first response to him was, I don't really know. And he said, I think you can do better than that. And I started to talk about my passion and my love for music and my background in music, and how, in addition to my family, who's probably number one, music is number two in terms of loves loves and passions. And he said to me, you can't see yourself as I can talking, Mike, but if you could, true story, you would see your face just glowing, and I can see your energy as you talk about what music means to you. And he said, I think you've landed on the answer to what could potentially distinguish you and help you create a very memorable brand. And that is borrowing from the world of music and blending it with your background and your academic experience in leadership and team development. And I think that's where you're going to find, the next chapter in your career journey. And I remember I said, James, what if people think the music piece of that is superfluous or frivolous or sounds kind of cheesy or corny? And he's like, well, there'll always be people out there that don't, whatever you're doing, it won't resonate for them. But if you do it with authenticity and passion and energy, there'll be plenty of people out there that really dig what you're doing. And that I was like, okay, James, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put it right out there in the name of the company, Right Chord Leadership. And my tagline is going to be, helping leaders and teams find their groove, get in sync, and work in harmony. Like there's no getting around the music piece of that,
Yeah.
right? When people work in harmony, great things happen. Like I started to come up with all these musical taglines that had connective tissue back to the organizational work that I was doing. Um, and that was a risk,
Yeah.
because people could have looked at that and gone like, is he a musician? Like what is right chord leadership, But it was the right move at the right time. And it
Yeah.
helped me distinguish myself in a very big marketplace. And they're like, oh, Mike, you're the music guy, right? You're the sax guy. Hey, you got your sax with you today? Like I get a lot of that.
Yeah.
And so, the risk, I'd like to think, sort of paid off. That's a long answer to your question, but that's definitely the biggest risk in my career.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into a younger version of you, an 18-year-old version of you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've gained. What advice would you impart on that young version of you?
It's sort of cliche, Joe, but I mean, it worked for me, and that's sort of like follow your heart, right? That's not a novel sentiment, but I could have very easily been dissuaded from creating right chord leadership and all of the musical trappings that go along with that, um, out of fear that, for what I just said a moment ago, people wouldn't get it, or, not everybody's a musician, or not everybody listens to music. Like the voice of judgment was strong. And there were a lot of reasons not to do that. And I was just like, just this feels right to me. I mean, nobody actively dissuaded me from that. I was doing most of the dissuading through the little voices in my head. But it felt right to me. I was like, yeah, I can see this being a thing. And I can see this being my, unique identifier in the marketplace. Are there other people that use music as a metaphor in their consulting work? Of course. But there's something to this. And so what I would say to younger Mike is, a lot of the jazz musicians that I love. Miles could have kept doing Kind of Blue 2.0, Kind of Blue 3.0, Kind of Blue 4.0. And he's like, I mean, he's been interviewed and he's like, I never ever want to look to the past. Like,
Yeah.
I've done that. Why would I want to do that again?
Yep.
And he started wearing funky clothes and playing his trumpet through a wah-wah pedal, right? And a lot of people hated it. They're like, "Where's the Kind of Blue, Miles?" He's like, "I don't care. This is what I want to do now."
Yeah.
So inspired by guys like that had a vision and knew it was the right thing for them at the time. And I'm in no way comparing myself to Miles, but that would be the advice I would tell any young person.
Yeah.
Just like, if you have a vision, if you have a dream, don't let anybody knock you off course. You follow that sucker until you either achieve it or you've come to the end of the road.
For
But
sure.
don't stop before. Don't stop
Yeah.
before. That's what I would
Absolutely.
say.
Yeah. So, Mike, of all the things that you've done and evolved into and become, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
The proudest of?
Yeah.
Um, Legally adopting my daughter. um, she has special needs, and she came as a package deal with my wife. And I didn't have kids in my first marriage. And so the prospect of being with my now current wife meant bringing this, at the time, 3-year-old child with special needs into my life. And her name is Nadi, Nadhi. And what I learned, and I had fears, like, could I be an adequate father to this young child? But we developed such a strong, loving bond that it just made perfect sense 3 years ago, 4 years ago, for me to ask her biological father, who wasn't particularly interested in her life, if he'd be willing to renounce his parental rights and I would adopt her legally and I'd be her legal father. And fortunately, he said yes. It didn't turn into some rancorous fight, as these things often do. And she and my wife, but my daughter has blessed my life in innumerable ways and is a constant source of joy and love for my wife, for me, and my extended family. So I had to sort of get over my own fears and just embrace being a father at relatively old age, in my mid 50s here, for the first time. And but it's been enormously rewarding, and I can't imagine an ulterior scenario at this point. So that's the proudest thing that I've done. And people have said to me, wow, that took a lot of guts, Mike, or it took a lot of courage to do that. And I was like, not really.
Right.
If you knew Nadi and the relationship that I've developed with her over the last decade or so, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of it, but I don't see it as some big courageous thing. It just was a it was a no-brainer.
Well, you're preaching to the choir. My son's 20 years old. He's on the spectrum. I've been in the special needs world for a long time, and it's just a part of what you do when you love these kids, and it's a different kind of love. So I totally get it.
Oh, yeah, it's a limitless love. I don't know
Yeah.
how else to put it, Joe. I
Yeah.
mean, she has her challenges, but she makes up for it with just sheer joy and empathy and a huge heart. Comes home from school, comes into my home office. Hey, Daddy, gives me a big hug. How was your day, sweetheart? I love you so much, Daddy. You're my hero. I mean, like, that stuff's just priceless.
Yeah.
You can't
Absolutely.
put.
Yeah,
So
for sure. So
I'm a lucky guy, Joe. I really
yeah,
am.
Oh, no, I get that. I totally get that. So let me ask you this. If anyone wants to reach out, they want to hire you, they want to see your music, any of the good business in your world, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, I would suggest starting on my website, which is rightchordleadership.com. So that's chord with an H, like a musical chord, not like a rope, which is CORD. I don't know where right chord CORD leadership takes you, but it won't take you to my website.
Yeah.
So rightchordleadership.com, CHORD. You'll see all the offerings that we have, the speaking offerings, the training offerings, the coaching offerings. And you'll get a feel for my approach and my philosophy and how I sort of lean on music, both metaphorically and also, literally
Yeah.
to teach folks about how to be the very best leader or very best team they can be. And I have a new book coming out in about a month. It's called Strike the Right Chord. It's available for pre-order right now on Amazon, and it's really an attempt to capture my thinking about music through the thinking about leadership through the lens of music. So lots to check out about my work, and if it sounds like we could move forward with some initiative that you're thinking about, we can certainly have that conversation. I'd be happy to do so.
Absolutely. And I will put all of that, the show notes and show links. What a great surprise, man. You've hit all of these different levels of my interest and what I do. So Mike, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Best of luck with everything, and hopefully we run into each other down the road.
I appreciate your time and your interest in my work, Joe. This has been a real pleasure. I'd love to get to know you a little better and your jazz, your love for jazz and stuff. Maybe we'll reconnect offline.
Let's do it.
But this is
Yeah,
a wonderful opportunity, and I'm most appreciative. Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.